Hi, I'm Christian Triola, author of The Missing Method for Guitar books. And in this video, I'm taking on the subject of what is a lick and how do I use it? Now, guitar licks are something that pretty much every guitar player learns at some point. And when I was first learning, I was told that learning licks are kind of a waste of time. And so I didn't bother learning any for a long time. Because I was like, well, why waste my time? I'm just going to go in and, learn all the other things that I can, rhythm playing, scales, listening to songs, things like that. And that's all good stuff. But over the years, I've come to discover that that was really bad advice, that learning licks can be incredibly beneficial to your playing. However, I do understand the anti-lick argument. So I'm going to take a look at both sides of that argument in this video. So let's get started. So first, let me explain what constitutes a lick. A lick is a small phrase of music that has a starting point, a middle point, and an ending point. And it's usually fairly short, a measure, maybe 2 to 4 measures, but no longer than that. So if you were to sing a phrase of music, it would have a starting point, an ending point, and you'd probably take a breath. So it's the same kind of thing on any instrument. You have a starting point, ending point, so it's just a little phrase of music. All right, so what I want to talk about then is, first of all, the value of learning licks. Why are they important? Well, for one, it kind of gives you new ways of approaching scale notes. So let's say someone's strumming a C chord or C5 power chord, or they're strumming a C major 7th jazz chord. You'll know what to play along with them as a lead part by learning a lick. Because if you just sit there and start playing, a C scale, or if you just take the C scale and start changing the rhythm on it, it's a little predictable and it doesn't sound like much of anything, so it's not musical. So in my mind, a lick is a way of taking a scale and making it musical. So you have a feeling of phrasing in your soloing. So one of the things that's beneficial, besides giving you ideas of what to play along with other people and chord progressions or backing tracks, is that you can use licks to develop certain skills. For example, if you find that you have a difficult time bending with your pinky, just as a quick example there, you could come up with your own lick using scale notes that forces you to bend with your pinky. So you're kind of isolating a technique along with learning something that you can then incorporate into a solo. They also help you understand the point of learning scales. Once you know a scale, you can then start mixing those notes up, adding different rhythms, and essentially creating your own licks. And so that's another fantastic thing that licks do. So again, if you know the C major scale, instead of just playing those notes, you can think, okay, I'm going to start on this note, and maybe that's the start of a solo. That lick you can then throw in anytime you have a chord that matches that scale. Now, of course, that's the tricky part. You have to understand the relationship between chords and scales. Once you do, then these licks even make more sense. Learning other people's licks, of course, helps you come up with your own ideas. And so there are a lot of ways of doing that. There are a lot of books out there that can teach you licks. In fact, there's tons of them devoted to just licks. I know the Musicians Institute has a lictionary, as they call it, and it's not bad. Some of the licks I'd never use, but it's still useful to learn them because it kind of gives you ideas of what you might want to play in a solo. So other books that are useful for learning licks, so we have Fretboard Freedom. Now, I didn't write this one. This is not published by our company. This is by Hal Leonard, but it's an excellent book for learning licks. It has you basically playing a lick every single day based on chord tone. So it's chord tone playing. It has a variety of genres that it covers. There's a heavy emphasis on jazz and rock, but it does include some country licks, some bluegrass licks, and some other things along the lines. And it's a good way of learning licks. Another couple books that I'd highly recommend, one is Pentatonic Master. This is one of them that I've written, and basically it takes you through the pentatonic scale all over the neck And as you go through that scale, at the end of each section, you have some pretty basic licks that you can start off with and kind of use to make your own. So there are some licks in this book that you could explore, and by the time you're done, you'll know your pentatonic scale inside and out. The next one, of course, major scale master. This one's much thicker. You go through the major scale all over the neck, and by the time you're done, once again, you'll know your major scale. And at the end of each section, again, there are licks included to help you see how the scales relate to those licks. So those are some that I'd recommend. There are, of course, like I said, plenty of others out there that are just dedicated to licks. You could check those out. And by learning those licks, the next question is, what do you do with them? I mentioned you would play over certain chords, of course, and that's a great place to start from. So it kind of gives you a starting point for developing your own solos. However, there is a dark side to licks. The reason why so many people told me, don't bother with licks early on, and that is you can come to rely on them. And what I mean by that is you rely on them verbatim. So you learn a lick, let's say it's, that's one of the first licks I ever learned. And I find myself every once in a while slipping that into a solo. And the problem with it is that it has a starting and ending point, like I said, but when it ends, it's over. Where do you go from there? And that's a problem that licks sometimes have, is that they'll sound like, okay, my idea's done. Or you start playing licks and you just end up reciting licks rather than making music. And there's definitely a difference there. If you're just reciting licks, you're like, okay, I got that one right. Okay, I got that one right. Okay, that one sounds cool. They're gonna sound good, but they're not you. They're not you expressing yourself through your instrument. So what you can do with that is say, okay, I really like this lick, but I don't want to play it verbatim every time. So what you can do is say, okay, what are some of the elements of that lick? One thing you have, of course, is those triplets. Triplet, rest, triplet. It's not really a rest, it's kind of a note that's held out longer. But maybe you'll use that concept and do it with some other notes in that scale. You can hear I'm doing a hammer-on pull-off triplet, ending with something else on another string just to break up that idea a little bit. And so the idea of learning licks is that you take from those licks concepts to apply to your own solos. You want to avoid simply reciting licks as much as possible. And that is the trap. That's why so many guitar players and teachers say, kind of avoid the licks, because you'll just end up playing the licks because you'll feel like I'm doing it correctly, I'm doing it right, I know this is going to work. Ultimately, you want to make music. And so learning the lick is a gateway to learning how to create your own licks, your own ideas to make music. So to wrap up this video, I just want to talk about a few quick tips that might help you out. So first, think of your licks as scales. You wouldn't just play through a scale along with somebody else, you'd make it musical. So that's number one. Think of them as a source of information rather than just a sentence that you want to repeat. It's kind of like if you were to take all your favorite lines from different movies and mash them together into a song. It might make sense here and there, but overall it's going to sound like you just pulled famous lines from different movies. So you want to avoid that sort of thing. Number two on the list is write your own licks right away. Take the first lick you learn, write something else based on that, and you'll find that it's a lot of fun to do, and that'll help you learn your instrument even faster. Three, once you have a few licks, start soloing along with backing tracks. There's tons of them you can find even on YouTube. Just figure out what key they're in. Find one that's slow enough for you, because as a beginner with licks, you want to go slowly. Which of course leads me to my last tip, which is learn those licks in different keys. I'm going to use that same lick I used earlier. So all I got to do is think, okay, that's based on the A minor pentatonic scale. Let's go to the G minor pentatonic scale. Let's go to the C So you can hear it's the same thing. I've just moved into different keys, so I have a good idea of how I might do that in a song. I can then apply that same lick to a lot of different situations. Also, too, start to learn how that lick might work with other chords. You know, so for example, if I have an A chord and it's a blues, I can use that A minor pentatonic lick. If I use an A major chord, it's going to make that sound. It's going to give it that blues sound. If I use an A minor chord, it's going to sound like it fits just as well because it's a minor scale that I'm using. And you can hear how the chord affects the sound of that scale. So you can use those licks with other chords and in other situations that will still sound good. And there's a lot of different ways to go about doing that. That's the subject for a whole different video, but just know that that's possible. All right, so hopefully that gives you a good idea of how you can use licks, where you can go to start learning them, and why they are important after all. So if you like this video, give me a like, leave a comment, and if you liked it enough, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I always appreciate it when people do that stuff. It helps me out, and it lets you know when I'm putting out new videos, of course. All right, also visit themissingmethod.com, and when you're there, you can check out all our books, some of which I've mentioned already in this video. We also have books on note reading, playing chords, technique, and a whole lot more. All right, so get to practicing, and I will see you in the next video.